Right, welcome back. We're going to look at a lady who I'm pretty familiar with. Hopefully, by the end of this, you will be somewhat familiar if you aren't already. She's a pretty amazing lady, was a pretty amazing lady. She's passed away. But her books are very well worth reading. They're pretty moving and thought-provoking. The overall sense that I had from reading them the first time was an unwavering faith, and like the Romans 8:28, that all things work to the good. No spoiler alerts, obviously, because there were, she, as the quote in the thumbnail alludes to, she lost many things that, like most of us, I don't know that we'd be able to go through half of it, quite frankly, but we would with Jesus, of course. So I can see the chat. And just a little point up. I know who she is. People are answering me. Bless you, Ivan. And I think it was Miss Piggy. But yeah, it's more of a rhetorical question. Well, one that I'm about to answer, so not very rhetorical. Either way, Corrie ten Boom. So she was born in 1892 and she died in 1983. It's a pretty long life. And her sister was called Betsy. So Corrie and Betsy ten Boom. As they were being transported to Ravensbrück, I'm going to pause and apologise for my pronunciation. Ravensbrück was a concentration camp. If you're like a contemporary, as it were, we're reading in the time that it happened. And this sentence, Corrie and Betsy ten Boom, these two sentences, being transported to Ravensbrück concentration camp. And these 11 words, two sentences, were scrawled onto a scrap of paper and squeezed through a slit in the boxcar and into the hands of a complete stranger to Corrie. These 11 words, were their only hope of ever getting a message to their family to let their family know of their current predicament. And the day previous to them passing the note through the boxcar wall, more than 700 prisoners, male prisoners, had been summarily executed at the work camp outside of Vught in occupied Holland. So for anybody who isn't that up on their Second World War history, Holland was occupied by the Nazis. The girls had been imprisoned there for some months, so their family, of course, knew of their imprisonment, but now they're being transported to Ravensbrück following, like a day after being present, albeit at a distance, as it were, to the murders of 700 men. It's just that alone. Like, if we just stopped there, that's pretty it's unbelievable. Like, it's not unbelievable. It's astonishing, and it's heart-wrenching for me, and it's it just beggars belief. I don't mean for a second how 700 men could be murdered in more than in one foul swoop. I very rarely am astonished at acts of evil because they're just so ten a penny, as it were. But the fact that she endured, and not only endured, you may get a spoiler alert from this video, not only endured, but she endured, I want to say cheerfully, but that's not the right, joyously. Like, she didn't waver in her reliance on the Lord throughout all of her ordeals, which were, I can sympathize certainly, but I hope to never be able to empathize, obviously. So let's catch up with this story again. So they'd been there for a few months. You're right. All of the more than 700 men were slaughtered. I don't think that's too strong a term, obviously. And the following day, they're being transported to Ravensbrück, where they, like a concentration camp, a death camp in actual fact, as opposed to a work camp, which attests, even without thinking about it, to their physical state and their usefulness in terms of labour. And that's their only hope, of letting their family know what's going on. And they weren't alone. It wasn't it wasn't a special service just for them. There were hundreds of only women, and they were herded like animals into freight cars, railway freight cars, and they would spend in there 3 days. I mean, it doesn't sound like, if somebody were to say, oh, I'm going on holiday for 3 days, it doesn't sound like long enough. It doesn't sound like a long time at all. And then we remember that Christ, in those 3 days, performed the most miraculous, praiseworthy, like there aren't any real words, like awe-inspiring, crushing defeat of Satan and institution of the new covenant, as it were, in only 3 days. These ladies, these girls, in fact, for Corrie and Betsy, would spend 3 days utterly crushed, not only psychologically and physically, but like in degradation. Like I believe that, this is illegal for animals where I am. The filth, the stench, the overpowering despondency, I guess, were their companions for 3 days. And all of, like, the 2 girls and their fellow prisoners travelled deeper into Germany towards, I think this is not really an accolade, but it's one of the most notoriously brutal death camps in existence at that time. And if you think that death camps are a thing of the past, like I would look askance to China, as it were. Either way, months earlier, Corrie and her older sister Betsy were living quite comfortably in comparison to their fellows. Their father Caspar was a watchmaker. They had the pictures in my mind. I've never seen it, obviously, or even photographs, but from reading the books a couple of times as a quite younger Kay, I pictured coziness and warmth and love and faith. And their home was above a watch repair shop, and that was in Haarlem, which is not the American version, which is in Holland or the Netherlands, as the Dutch call it with a different accent. Their mother, at the point of recollection that we're going to, had already been passed away some several years. And from the outside, their home above the watch repair shop, where their father was the the breadwinner and the watch repair person. I don't think they're called engineers. I don't know. The watchmaker, that will do. It looked unremarkable and perfectly ordinary. Behind closed doors, behind the shop front, behind the brick walls and the glass, it was anything but ordinary. It's a shame that it wasn't the purpose for which it became functional within the Second World War. It's a shame that it wasn't a more ordinary occurrence, but sadly, not everybody is of such faith that they're able to just risk everything, really. As the Second World War progressed, the home of Caspar ten Boom and his children became progressively more it served as a refuge, quite frankly, and it was part of the underground resistance movement for both hiding and protecting Jews from the Nazis, who were pretty darn keen on rounding them up. You may think of another, quasi-organizational Jew-hating ideology, but we're talking about the Nazis at the moment. And they hid the family, Caspar and his family, hid as many as 7 Jews. I mean, each one, they would have all been if not tortured and killed, certainly tortured and held for just one of those, just the implication of one, actually. And members of the resistance, so 7 Jews and members of the resistance within their hiding place, and that's also the title of one of Corrie's books, The Hiding Place. They had a secret room secreted behind what was already a hidden wall on the 3rd floor of the building in Corrie's bedroom. So she was closest, as it were, to the forefront of resisting and assisting God's people. I feel like I remember that from the book, Casper calling them that. Some of them stayed for extended periods. Others would stay just for, 1 or 2 days before being moved on the railroad, as it were, I guess, the underground resistance, safe houses. One just, like, I can't imagine at all. I could very well imagine when I read the books. They're very beautifully written. And Corrie recalled during this time hearing pretty stark and dire warnings from the friends of Caspar, her father, who were, I don't know about rightly anxious, but they were worried and were proven, like sadly great, that he would surely face at least imprisonment if he continued in his, what they assumed to be foolhardy or at least ill-advised, his persistence and faith in God that hiding the Jews was the correct course of action. And she remembered his reply also whenever these warnings would be brought forth, as it were. He said this: "I am too old for prison life. But if that should happen, then it would be for me an honour to give my life for God's ancient people, the Jews." So quite charming. So, scooting forward ever so slightly, because as I'm sure you're all aware, 1944 is kicking it a bit in terms of it's in the second half of the game, as it were, of the Second World War. So on the morning of February 28th in 1944, Corrie, who was suffering from influenza and was sick in her bed, became dimly aware, vaguely registered the sound of a buzzer being buzzed, ringing, I guess you could say. So she had a fever. She had a pretty drastic headache at the time. However, she, as she lay there, she struggled to make sense of what is this noise? What's going on? Because it was so persistent and incessant as an intrusion onto her fever dreams, I guess. And it wasn't a drill, as it were. It wasn't some piece of heavy equipment. It was a raid. And 6 of the refugees, 4 Jews, 2 members of the resistance, were forced to unceremoniously run into her room and scramble to get into their hiding place, behind the false wall in the room that we've discussed. And literally, as they were safely secured inside, as she lowered the secret panel and rushed back to her bed, into bed, Gestapo members, or at least one of them, appeared, as it were, at the foot of her bed. And he ordered her to get dressed and follow him down the stairs, where basically her family, 2 sisters, her father, other family members, and herself, who had, some of them had only been present in the house for a prayer meeting that morning, were both beaten and interrogated whilst the Gestapo officers searched for the Jews. And we know that there were resistance people there also. And as they waited, anybody who came into the shop literally could have just been somebody who needed their watch repaired, were also seized and interrogated pretty harshly. And at the end of that day, 35 people, captives of the Gestapo, were dragged to prison. Even though they thoroughly ransacked the house, that Corrie and her family shared up until like literally moments ago, when they were taken off to prison unceremoniously, the Gestapo did not find what they were most interested in looking for because, of course, that was the Jews, and they were not discovered. 47 hours later, so just shy of 2 full days and nights, they were freed from the. It wasn't a room. Let's have it right. It's not like a palatial, like it's a little wall space, a cramped wall space, and they were taken to new safe houses. And of the 6, 4 of these Jews survived the war. So that's pretty encouraging. And whilst they were being interrogated by the Gestapo, Caspar, whom you may remember is the watchmaker and Corrie's father, was given what was dangled in front of him was the chance of freedom. "I'd like to send you home, old fellow," the chief officer said. "I'll take your word that you won't cause any trouble." And Corrie overheard her father replying in this fashion. He said, "If I go home today, tomorrow I will open my door again to any man in need who knocks." It's pretty bold. It's pretty brave as well after you've just watched your whole home and your livelihood being torn to pieces, as it were. So another book of Corrie's called Prison Letters. In the introduction, in the preface, she writes that as they were huddled together on the floor of the police station that evening, this is a direct quote, "God used Father to prepare each of us in a special way for the unknown times that lay ahead. Father asked my brother Willem to read Psalm 91, and then Father prayed. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him I will trust." I love that verse. And not too long after, a few hours, outside of the gates of Scheveningen, which was a prison, a federal penitentiary, Corrie spoke her last words, or exchanged her last words at least, with her father. And she said, she just called out, "Father," as both she and Betsy were led to their cells, "God be with you." And literally before the door had closed, she heard his reply, which was simply, "And with you, my daughters." And Caspar, sadly, very distressingly, died still as a prisoner 10 days after their final words were exchanged. And both Corrie and Betsy spent 4 months, 16 weeks, I guess, at Scheveningen. I can't, it's been a while for my Dutch. Scheveningen, maybe. Corrie was separated. She was in solitary confinement, whereas her sister, Betsy, her older sister, had several other inmates in with her. It was whilst they were both in prison that a letter from their sister Nolly arrived, who had been released prior to writing the letter. And in this correspondence, they learned of the death of Caspar, their father. And this is another direct quote. "During my months of solitary confinement, I often felt lonely and afraid." And she writes this also in the introduction as opposed to the preface to the prison letters. "In such moments, I recalled that last night with my father sharing Psalm 91 and praying. I could remember some of those verses, especially that He shall cover thee with His feathers and under His wings shalt thou trust. I would close my eyes and visualize that kind of protection. And with that thought in mind, I would fall asleep." So now 4 months after they arrived at, I've got to say it again, I'm so sorry for any Dutch people, Scheveningen, maybe. Betsy and Corrie were transferred to Vught, which was a German concentration camp. And this was a camp specifically, although none of them were, let alone fit for purpose, but used in totality for the purpose, at least in terms of numbers. But this was for political prisoners. And this was a German camp, like I said, but this was in the southern part of the Netherlands, in southern Holland. And the living conditions were even less favourable at Vught. All that aside, the death of their father, these two girls were at this point reunited and were overjoyed, as one could imagine. Like, I don't know if you can imagine, but hopefully. Corrie later described her time at Vught as a baffling mixture of good and bad. Like, it's really some powerful and amazing testimony of the faithfulness of God, and I'm never going to cover it like in this small vid, but on the one hand, she was grateful for secret prayer meetings that she and her sister held within their dormitories, because, like, this just sprang to mind. I'm pretty confident that maybe this is the part of her journey where this happened. She recalled in one of the books going into the barracks, as it were, the dormitory, and being eaten alive by fleas. Like, she said, she just felt like utterly all over her. And, that caused some despondency. However, the silver lining, the Romans 8:28 in that, is that the guards, the Nazis, weren't willing to come into the lady's dormitory where she was staying, because they didn't want to get eaten alive by fleas. So because of that fact, they were able to minister and witness I feel like, this is off the top of my head now, I feel like it was designed for maybe 300 people, and they were at capacity of about 1,000. It was I know it was about 3 times too many people. I may have the numbers wrong, because this is not in my notes. This is out of my brain. What she said is, what I had not realised in solitary confinement was that to have companions meant to have their griefs as well. And before too long, she would endure more personal grief of her own. The comparative ease of life at Vught, obviously it wasn't easy, but compared to Scheveningen, that all stopped really when both she and Betsy were loaded into a boxcar and transported, with all of these other ladies, like, just filthy, like sitting in their own excrement. I'm going to put it like that. They nearly died from thirst along the way as they were transported to Ravensbrück, which, as I said, is a death camp and a concentration camp, which is in the heart of Germany as opposed to southern Holland. And it was pretty much, the word, was synonymous with nothing good. And it was kind of like even a curse word, or it evoked just such horrors, even at the time it was happening. And, like, just pause to consider that most scenes of horror and, degradation and murder, etc., become notorious afterwards, once it all comes to light. But amongst the people that Betsy and Corrie were around, it was already had a pretty black name, as it were. And she says that the word passed back through the lines as they were assembled. This is a direct quote from her. This was the notorious women's extermination camp whose name we had heard even in Haarlem. That squat concrete building, that smoke disappearing in the bright sunlight. No, I would not look at it. As Betsy and I stumbled down the hill, I felt the Bible bumping between my shoulder blades. God's good news. Was it to this world he had spoken it? So, as we just noticed, I don't know if anybody caught it, but Corrie had carried around her Bible with her for months and months, and it was hidden. Obviously, it was verboten. It was forbidden to have it. But it was hidden in a pouch that she'd basically hung like halfway down her back. And this was just underneath, like, the most threadbare of dresses at this stage. And at Ravensbrück, both Betsy and Corrie really did consider, like, God's word a complete and utter lifeline. The reason they were there, the reason they were inured and overwhelmed and like suffocated by apparently seemingly like pointless suffering was clear to both of them, even though I'm pretty sure I could have a run up to it and still consider it utterly redundant and pointless. But they both felt, and this is another direct quote, from morning until lights out, whenever we were not in ranks for roll call, our Bible was the center of an ever widening circle of help and hope. Due to I was going to say scarcity, but the paucity, like the little to zero sustenance, no food, the crowded, filthy, lice-ridden conditions, the sleeping platforms, the like brutal labour, like not just sewing mailbags or something, like they were brutalised through physical labour. Within these platforms that they slept on, to put it in context for you, they stretched feet to face, as it were, top to tail, and they had not even adequate space to turn over or to sit up. So they were pretty much in like oversized coffins already, you could say, if you were kind of macabre, which, yep, that's me. And that was relentless. There was no afternoon off or any kind of niceties from anybody who worked there, certainly. Each week they were paraded, and they were paraded naked. Humans, you've got to love them, literally. So the guards would be leering. I don't know what they would be leering at, because these were skeletal ladies who had been ravaged by like nature and a lack of food and just the filth. Like this was all under the guise of a medical inspection for people you're about to kill. Obviously, you need to know they're fit enough. However, in spite of like the unending or seemingly ceaseless humiliations, punishment, trumped up charges, you know, like just potential for despondency, the Bible kept like dozens and dozens of women alongside Corrie and Betsy steady, let's say that. And Corrie described in the book, Prison Letters, the nights that they literally were all huddled under one like flickering weak light bulb. She would have the Bible, and they would see it as I don't know, the Bible, I mean, not the conditions, as a preview of heaven. And there were women there, it should be said, of pretty diverse nationalities and other faiths. And they also were gathered around as the verses from scripture were passed up and down the aisles, and they were translated like on the hoof, as it were, into French, Polish, Russian, Czech, and back into Dutch again. At times, as like is completely understandable to my mind, at least, Corrie's faith faltered more than once during her time at Ravensbrück, certainly. And her sister like was an anchor, was like steadfast. Yeah, she was really a rock, as it were, because Corrie recalls saying, Betsy, how can we live in such a place? When they first saw Barracks 28, which is where 1,400 women were all like basically shunted in to this flea-infested, not very good hygiene facilities, barracks. It was designed to hold 400, so I was a little off. But yeah, 1,400, an additional 1,000 women, basically in a space of 400. They had 9 to a platform bed, which was supposed to hold 4, and that is why they couldn't turn over, as it were. When she said this, when she said, Betsy, how can we live in such a place? Betsy answered her, show us how. And at that point, Corrie realised that she wasn't actually speaking to her, she was praying. More and more, the distinction between prayer and the rest of life seemed to be vanishing for Betsy. And this was an observation of Corrie's when discussing her sister's unfailing faith and the hope that she held. I didn't know there was a film in Cherokee. Oh, brilliant. So as December progressed, this is the month they're in at the moment, one can imagine the temperatures, the lack of insulation other than body heat, but again, skeletal people don't really, they're not known for being like cozy, as it were. Betsy, her health deteriorated steadily. And as just within the space of this month, she was finally unable to stand unaided on her own for the morning 4:30 a.m. if you're not too shy, the roll call, the register being called. And it was then that she began to discuss and speak about future plans for, sometime in the future. She spoke pretty animatedly for someone who was so weak about having a home within the Netherlands where she would facilitate ex-prisoners of war. Sorry, somebody's calling me. I just had to cancel that. Yeah, where she would house ex-prisoners of war for recuperation and convalescence, and peace and quiet and tranquility. And later, she spoke of refurbishing a concentration camp, like a German one, where the people warped, this is a direct quote, the people warped by this philosophy of hate, end quote, would be rehabilitated in terms of learning how to love. So lovely. The day before she died, Betsy grabbed a hold of Corrie and pulled her down close to where she was lying on the floor in a hospital ward, and she whispered like into Corrie's ear her last vision, as it were, her last hope. She said, we must tell them that there is no pit so deep that he is not deeper still. They will listen to us, Corrie, because we have been here. It's just like how, I think it's very moving. And the following morning, I gave the game away by saying the day before she passed away, when Corrie looked into tried to look in through the grime of the hospital window, she watched the nurses lifting her sister's like tiny frame wrapped in a sheet and, just plonked it on the floor, basically, next to all the other dead bodies. Another 3 days after this, and Corrie was summoned to the headquarters of the camp, where she was given a certificate. And this part of the story, I really don't want to spoil the book. I mean, I have, but I haven't, because it's such a charming account. It's obviously weaved with theology and like observations of deepening faith and stuff. But she was given a certificate. And she just held it for a little while, and she had to read the word many, many, many times. And the word was entlassen, which is released. And that was on the back of a clerical error. I say clerical error. God decided that she was getting out because nobody really was released. It was a death camp, like a hardcore as opposed to labor camp. But they meant it for evil and God made it for good. So scoot forward a little bit. She considered it a miracle. It was considered an accident, as it were, or they made the error, the clerical error. In 1959, so we're talking 14 years, minimally, depending on what time of the year it was, after she had become freed, she again visited Ravensbrück. And that is where she finally learned, properly, as it were, that a clerk had mistakenly erroneously recorded her prisoner number on a list of those to be released, as opposed to where she was supposed to be, intending to go, which was onto the execution list. I mean, you don't get more dicey, like on a knife edge than that, as it were. A week after she had been released, after she regained her freedom, every woman of Corrie's age and older was executed at Ravensbrück. And that's a lot of people. So following this, like in the months, the weeks, the months, the years, after her return to Haarlem, she concentrated on her sister's like dying wishes, as it were, on fulfilling these visions, these dreams that Betsy had vouchsafed to her. She acquired a patron, a generous patron, and was able to plough forward and establish a rehabilitation home in Holland for war victims. And later, even more amazingly, she opened a second rehabilitation facility for Germans at a former concentration camp, just as they had discussed, or just as Betsy had discussed. When she was 53, Corrie began a worldwide ministry. She's available to watch her in person, as it were, speaking. She's a very charming elderly lady by the time she recorded these things for television, but they're on YouTube, and it's quite just amazing. If you've read the books and if you've got even like a vague snapshot from what I'm telling you, to just look at her is enough. Like she, let me scoot to the end of these notes and then we'll have a chit chat. So yeah, she got the facility for Germans, the former concentration camp. She got the rehabilitation camp where she was going to teach them how to love, as it were, for the Dutch, or for the non-Nazi even, ex-prisoners of war and war victims, like as a wider demographic. So she now, going from somebody who's literally, they're about to pencil her onto the execution list where she was supposed to be, and this error has got her out, and now at age 53 she starts a worldwide ministry, as you do. Like she could have literally just stuck her feet up at this point. I don't think, well, I wouldn't have been tut-tutting. This ministry took her to 60 countries over 33 years. You know, on those travels and in those places and at those times, she shared not only her own experiences, but those of Betsy also, who was obviously unable to do that herself. And what she conveyed overall was an unwavering hope and a faith in Jesus. Like she's so charming. You must, like, maybe I'll read some excerpts of her books as a video. She also wrote books, pretty, like these are some of them. A Prisoner and Yet, that's one. The Hiding Place, Tramp for the Lord, In My Father's House, and Prison Letters. So she used the proceeds from those books and funneled it into her ministry. And yeah, she had a home in Los Angeles. She named it Shalom House. Bless her. And on April 15th, 1983, in California, as I just mentioned, on her 91st birthday, she passed away. I don't want to speak out of turn. I feel that I'm correct in saying she lost all of her family within those first few years of the Second World War. Her father certainly, she didn't find out immediately, but he passed away. Betsy passed away. I think Nolly also passed away. Willem. Yeah, I feel like that rings true to me, that they were all, she was the only one to survive the camps. And not only that, she survived onto her 91st birthday. her entire extended family, including her, suffered unimaginable horrors for their convictions, not necessarily in the same fashion when I do the persecution videos, but certainly for their convictions, as Casper admirably asserted to the Nazis. He said, if you send me home tomorrow, I'll open my door to anybody in need. And I believe eventually they were tricked into, the reason they had been raided that day, if I remember rightly, was because a sting had been set up whereby either a Nazi officer or a Nazi sympathizer had pretended that he had a wife at home who was desperately sick and needed to, was a Jew and needed to get away. And because of the rushed nature of it, they were entrapped in that fashion. And I guess, if you're blessed enough to have the time and the inclination to read these books, or if you just manage to catch me doing a video, maybe reading some of them out, a pretty natural, something that I've already contemplated when I read them the first time is you wonder to yourself, would I have been able to string a sentence together, at the age of 53 after going through all of that? Would my brain, would my mind still be willing to engage with the world after the horror? It's no, it's the world is under the sway of wickedness, but come on, unimaginable, concentrated evil, and shame, and illness, and just horrific. And the good thing is we don't have to really guess at an answer, as it were, because it's kind of something that we beat ourselves with, a source of uncertainty. Because I remember Dr. Jordan Peterson, saying, if you think that you could have been a German in Nazi Germany and that you personally would not have become, if not a Nazi apologist, or someone who acquiesced to that, you're wrong. As the people where it happened, oftentimes it's very easy to judge, retrospectively, but unless you're that person in that time, in that place, with those fears and those threats, it's more plausible that one, just as an observer of human nature, that one would go along with the prevailing status quo. What we can be sure of, we can ponder these things. We can wonder, would I have had the strength to carry on? Would I have been praising God all the way through, which Corrie certainly did? Would I have been using, prayer in the same fashion as Betsy, etc.? What we can be sure of is that the entire family, it seems, trusted entirely in God, and the God referenced in Psalm 91. I like that Psalm anyway. I'd forgotten that it was in the book. Maybe that's how I came across it in the first place. I can't remember. When their faith faltered, because it's not a sin to have your faith waver. Faith is a fruit of the Spirit, and of course, the secular world and the darkness of the world. It's pretty bad now, but it was also pretty bad then. Is able, somewhat, just a teensy bit, and it can become incremental, to impinge upon your faith. And it doesn't mean, because your faith falters, it doesn't mean that you lose faith. It just means that the doubts seem louder than the conviction, just on the surface. But even when the faith of this family wavered and faltered, even when I guess it would have seemed, and for most of them, that evil did prevail, not in spiritual terms, but only in the physical terms, when they passed away, or when they were being slowly tortured and murdered. The word literally, not only Corrie's Bible, but Jesus, the word of God, cast an entirely different perspective. And I hope that was just so desperately needed there. And Corrie, I remember, ponders the fact that was why, because of it's ridiculously common for survivors of trauma, and certainly, there's survivor's guilt and stuff like that. But that aside, the why is always the prevailing question. Like, on the surface, you might presume to just want to forget about it and get on with your life, but why did this happen to me is such a very common, like, a topic for counselling and for psychological analysis and stuff like that. And I remember Corrie, with certainty, actually, saying that she'd come to the conclusion that she was there to spread the light of Christ. In order that these, think of it, all of the 1,400 women, or 1,399, that she was crammed in with, a week after she was accidentally released, anybody of her age and above, of a female nature, was slaughtered. And if she hadn't have been there up until the day she was released, I would hazard a guess that, as the only one with a Bible, none of them would have. If they were Christian, they would have known, but if they weren't, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn from the book, as it were, and translate it into their own languages. So that was the reason that she was there, she felt. She, her sister, her brother, other sister, father, suffered more than any of us, please God, could even imagine, let alone experience and endure and live through joyfully. That was the kicker. When I read them the first time, I was so very impressed by her, like, her inner strength, even though she doesn't seem strong when she's laying it out and pondering. It's just unbelievable. It's just more than any of us could. We should. I wouldn't like to say the way the world's going, but please God, none of us have to endure that. Although brothers and sisters of ours are enduring. Christians in China, also Muslims in China, are encamped, as it were. Held hostage, tortured routinely, murdered, etc. And she was the sole survivor, as I mentioned, of her family, not of the camp. But she did live on. And what she used her many, 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 many good years to do was still to continue with the mission that she'd, like the cross that she'd taken up, basically, as she was dragged out of her bed sick. And that was to proclaim that, what Betsy already knew, or what Betsy came to know, that the love of Christ is deeper than any pit, like literally any pit, including hell. So I just thought, that's it. I thought I would bring that to you. I've got a few more utterly amazing Christian women that I'm going to go on to speak about in subsequent videos. I thought maybe I would whiz through all that, but I don't feel that I did. But I feel like it deserved some side notes, etc. Anywho, I really do hope that you haven't been distracted by anything in the live chat. I know it's almost as if it's intentional, but by tomorrow the chat would have been processed if you're watching this afterwards, so you can see what was being said. If you're watching this later, then maybe you paid attention to that, or you managed to be blessed with attention, as it were. Okay, so that's the bit on Corrie. Potentially, I will try to find copyright-free copies. I don't think that makes sense as a sentence. Versions of her book or clips, and I will definitely read some of them out anyway. Not that I don't love Lewis, obviously, but yeah, Martin is just unbelievable. Not unbelievable. I always say that meaning like flabbergasting. I don't know what the word is. Shocking. Like, it's one thing to see like grainy black and white footage of like skeletal, prisoners, and that's horrific enough, and the big mountains of dentures and spectacles and stuff. But because you warm to her as a character, even if it was a fictionalized book, which it isn't, it's just all the more heartbreaking by the time like Betsy skedaddles off to the kingdom, as it were. John, you're brave, mate. It is. I don't even know. Oh, it's Friday evening where I am. I don't know that I'd want to. The books are brilliant. I always prefer books to films. I do like films, don't get me wrong, but there's something about, like, you can digest it in smaller pieces. You can read it and then put it down and stop crying and get on with your life for a minute, if you know what I mean. And yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen the film. If Cherokee's like vouching for it, then you can. I was going to say something very East Londony. Then you can bet your bottom dollar. Let's have it that way. That is probably a good watch. I'm going to leave that message review for one of the admins. Oh, there you go. There it is. Either way, if you want to argue with each other, you can, if you like, but you can do it in the comment section, because I could argue in my spare time, if you know what I mean. I don't have to argue on YouTube. Who are you crying to, Mr. Brown? Is that me? What do you mean, if you wanted to go off topic? I feel like I wasn't reading them, but I assume you did go off topic. It's all right. I eventually get around to like many topics, but it's only, I mean, if like, I ain't got no problem with it. If you want to come in and like, you know, talk about other stuff or stuff that like occurs to you whilst you're listening, all you got to do is wait till I stop reading, and then you're not distracting anyone, are you? Because I always say, have you got any questions? I usually mean questions specific to the topic, but you know, I don't know. No worries, Dragon. Like I say, I feel like the next lady that I'm going to be discussing, I know her far less than I know Corrie, but that will be Katharina Luther. You may recognize her surname. I don't mean the TV cop show. I mean Wittenberg and the that guy. Bless him. So she'll be next, and there's loads, because as I was watching my own prem yesterday about early Christian, like, amazing women, I thought, oh, I know a load who are not that early, but are still just as amazing. Anonymous man, you're right, love. Yeah, so I know, Mr. Brown, but on topic, as in whilst I'm reading the stuffs. Like, I'm going to go ahead and guess that your topic that you veered off into was either religion or politics based. I'm just throwing it out there. Just the crazy kind of girl I am. Anywho. Oh, no, not the racism card. Surely. Oh, surely. I don't know why I'm calling you Shirley now, but come on. Please, let us just get a grip. If you want to talk about China and the Uyghurs and Uyghur Christians and that, I guess I did mention that, but that's not racism either. That's anti-theism. Most of my videos are Muslim. Most of the videos you watch of mine, maybe, but have a little scoop through. Try and back up your claim, because you do know that's how we do things in a debate. You're going to make a claim like that, you're wrong. And I can confidently assert that. The Speaker's Corner playlist that I have is like 190 odd vids, but my videos, as in me sitting here, 2-3 in the last year, have touched on Islam. That was the 10 most stupid fatwas. There may have been some prems, to be fair, from last year. I think I've done 2 videos polemicizing Islam. It's kind of boring, to be fair. I mean, it's done. It's disputed. It's not that interesting. So what I mainly focus on, if you just do like the most brief, have a little look on my channel videos, is I don't know, church history, apologetics, why polemics are important, things of that nature. Bible study-ish, triunity in the Old Testament, interviews, etc. So no, most of my videos are not about Islam. Not recently, anyway. Only in terms of Speaker's Corner, and that, my little love, is because most of the people at Speaker's Corner are Muslim. You might have noticed when you are there. every week, mostly. Thank you, John. John, I knew I liked you for a reason. Oh, I'll have to pay you the flattery money later, but thank you. I'm only teasing. Oh, I got anonymous man. I got a whole folder full of well, maybe they're all like unfair aspersions, but on the inherent racism of a certain well-known. Well, why give them any publicity? But yeah, I got loads. Literally in the other room, I got a folder like that. But yeah, kind of over it. Like obviously pro Jesus, but there's plenty of false arguments to tear down. It's just that Islam just keeps coming with the like excuses and stuff, and they trying to rationalize to like, what's the word? Not contradictory, but yeah, cognitive dissonance. Best example for mankind. Pretty shady lifestyle. Like they don't go together. You know what I mean? Jesus, oh, we love him, but not the real Jesus. You know, that sort of stuff. But once you've done it once, like, yeah, they were a lot better when it came to slavery. Don't be ridiculous, Mr. Brown. Christians were instrumental in ending slavery, although slavery, unfortunately, hasn't ended in the Islamic world, as you know. Because I know you're not just going to watch the mainstream and go with that twaddle. I know you know. Don't be silly. Please don't be silly. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't do it, folks. Yeah, there's nothing to do with the Messiah suffering, racism. So don't just scoot along. Don't start doing a yah, please. There are blacks for sale in Islamic countries. There are women for sale in Islamic countries right now. Not all of the Islamic countries, obviously. But this country that we live in, you and I, Mr. Brown, is not a theocracy anyway. Like even if we had, I mean, there's people smuggling and stuff here, but that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about the empire and that kind of slavery. And it was definitely Christians who. The other thing is, there weren't many Bible verses being put forward to justify it. But you can go in the Quran and grab them right now if you want to justify it. Yep, John, you're right, Livia. Anyway, it's best to distract yourself, I suppose, if you can ally yourself with a religion that most rational people, including Muslims, can admit the discrepancies in, can say like, yeah, that doesn't sound right. But then obviously you can just chuck that bit under the bus if you want, as long as it's not in the Quran. Even if it is in the Quran, it might have been abrogated. So happy days. Unless you're a slave in an Islamic country. Or let's not get started, because this video wasn't about Islam at all one bit. Nope. It was about an absolute stalwart of my faith called Corrie Tenboom. Lovely lady, very forgiving, very loving, very generous with her time and spirit to minister the word of God, as opposed to having like redundant arguments, because I'm not going to change my mind, and potentially neither are you. So what do you want? My time is limited on this planet, so is yours, so is everyone's. None of us are getting any younger. None of us are getting edified by just like backwards and forwards ping pong like arguments, because I wouldn't mind if anyone stuck to the topic. You know, you want to do a deep dive into slavery, go for it. Not in the live chat, obviously, but that's got nothing to do with the suffering of the Messiah. And that, you know what I mean? You can't just start throwing darts like, no, it's disingenuous. I ain't doing it. Why? You do make me laugh. I'm guessing your autocorrect is a bit wonky, Mr. Brown. You want to know one Muslim country that's waged war without a Christian Western country? Is that what you're saying? I'm assuming that's what you're saying. Okay, I'll find you one after. I've got a few just popped up in my mind, but I'm not a military strategist or expert. But yeah, okay. I would say there's war being waged, not by the country itself, but with the Prime Minister looking like sideways, Buhari in Nigeria. That's a full-on genocide, according to the British government, and they should know they've been involved in a few. According to, like, I could literally hear you gearing up to be throwing rocks, as it were. Like, that's war. That's spiritual warfare. That's the slaughtering of people because they love Esau. Apparently, you got to laugh. You got to make it up. Well, someone did make it up, but you know what I mean. Unreal, unbelievable. But yeah, so I'd say that was a war, an unofficial war. I'd say that the oh shucks, I've got so many places rattling around in my brain. And that's so disgusting. I can't think of the place, and they are regularly, routinely, like under great duress and butchering. I can't think. I could reel off a load, but it's literally I've got a blank in my mind. But I would say that anywhere that where it's officially and like quantifiably a genocide against Christians, and the prevailing, the prime minister is a Muslim and looking the other way, whilst swathes of Fulani herdsmen. Who they herding? Give me a break. Oh, they're doing that. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. You asked for one instance. Doesn't matter whether Boris Johnson got on one of his Boris bikes, pedalled over with a nuclear warhead to the Kaaba, would not in any means undermine my giving you one example of what you asked for. And this is what I mean about scooting left and right. Like it, stick to the topic broadly. Like, come on, you want to know unaided Islamic, I don't know, acts of war? There you go. If you don't. The chances are they're all using weapons that the West have in some way facilitated. What's that got to do with it? What does that have to do with it? Does that mean I'm supposed to sit there while Christians get like chopped up, macheted, raped, set on fire, buried in open graves, dragged about, just roll up on their village, set fire to it all? I'm telling you now, if it was a Muslim village, because they do kill 40% of their kills, Boko Haram, are Muslims. So I don't ever hear any Muslims screeching about it. I don't hear it. So maybe that's because I don't watch much of their stuff. I'm willing to accept that possibility. No, we're not. We're talking about right now. Right now, Mr. Brown. Right now. Nigeria is the number one place of the 340 million. Is it? Yeah, it's got to be million. Can't be any bigger than that. No, million people, Christians, who are persecuted as the biggest, like the largest religion that is persecuted globally. Those guys in Nigeria, the Nigerian branch, as we like to call it, of the church, number one place for getting killed just for loving Jesus. Apparently all Muslims love Jesus. So I wonder, maybe that's why 4 of all the 10 people killed by the jihadis are Muslim, because they wouldn't say they are, and you'd say they weren't either. But who cares? I'm not bothered who's doing it. I don't care if it's a one-legged atheist. I don't care if it's a transgender Hindu. I just don't give even half a shiz who's doing the killing. Could care less. But it happens to be in the top 10 of the top 50 of all the countries in the world. I think 8 of them are Muslim. It must be a coincidence. Because obviously Nejas and kill them where you find them and smite the unbeliever and fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day nor the religion of peace must all be a heavy misunderstanding while he was defending himself. All right, I'm bored of it. I just can't. Do me a favour. No. I love Corrie Just going to throw it out there. And what I will do is once this is processed, this vid, I will clip out her little lovely bit before the professional victimhood religion entered the verbal arena. I don't mean you, Mr. Brown. I mean in general the topic. Yeah, I'm going to clip that bit out and stick it on my other channel because I can. Power's gone to her head. John London. Yeah, I don't have a chance to watch many speakers gone videos, to be fair. Oh, John, the Coptics, mate. Do you remember that Nabil, that 62-year-old guy, was just ISIS style executed, just by 3. Obviously, they're well brave, those executioners, 3 of them. I mean, you're not supposed to say 3. You're not supposed to say Trinity anyway. And I know it's not Arabic, but I know the language of many Muslims in London, at least, where they say, don't say 3. 3 is equivocable with death. And it certainly was for Nabil, who was 62 and accused of collaborating with his own government. Whoa, can you imagine? Thank you, Monogenes. Monogenes. I don't know how you pronounce it. God bless you as well. Right, let's all remember the vid I did yesterday on kindness. Let's all ponder Christ's relationship with love. I mean, he is love. But let's have a little lovey vibe, as it were. I might even do a stream later. How do you like their apples? I haven't got a life. I might as well. I'm only joking. I was supposed to go and see my brother, but I've postponed because just for I have to watch. Do I swear that much in real life though? Just for shiz and giggles. Let's put it that way. Okay, I will, Mr. Brown. These things, they're not like deal breakers. That's easy. The Old Testament, easy peasy. I just wrote a 1,500 word assignment on it, literally, a couple of months ago. As soon as I get the grading back from the university, I'll do a video on it. No problem whatsoever. But do me a favour, babes, while I'm showboating. Copy and paste that and stick it in the comments for me, like with a link, so it goes into my review thing, so I can remember that to do the bid, because otherwise I forget the questions. I can't show you the raised from the dead necessarily from the Old Testament, but I can show you prophecies of it. So yeah, easy peasy. And the divinity of the Son of Man and King of Kings and yada yada. And everyone's doing, where were you lot when I was doing my homework? All these other verses. Ezekiel and Daniel I would go to. He didn't die. He wasn't, he didn't work in the fabric industry. I think he really died as in with an eye. He didn't die for your sins because he died for the sins of those who believe in him. He died for the sins of the world, but in order for it to profit you anything, you have to believe that he is God. Not Allah, obviously. He's silly. God. So yeah, we're still talking about it. How does it do it? Oh, that's a lovely verse, Cherokee. I like that. I do like that. Yeah, so Mr. Brown, no joke. Stick it in the comments with a link to whatever link you want. All right. Doesn't really matter. I don't click the links anyway. But yeah, that question, and I'll do a video on it. I give you my word, because I'm not a fibber. I can't do it now. Yeah. Who gives a shizzle about Bart Ehrman? Bart Ehrman compared the Quran to the phone book. I don't think you believe. Bart Ehrman speaks. His arguments can be used positively for Christianity. He's only a New Testament scholar anyway, so it wouldn't really matter what he said about Ezekiel and Daniel and coming of the Son of Man and all that shiz. Doesn't matter what Jewish scholars say. Again, doesn't matter. We're not praetorists. We don't think that all the prophecies have already been fulfilled. There's other ones coming anyway. Like, hindsight is the thing, you know. And the Jews, to be fair, they've got so many different rabbinic schools. I'm not saying that Christianity isn't diverse in terms of application of the scripture, but you can pretty much find a Jew to say, like, you can find one who agrees with a lot of stuff. And there are, of course, Jews who are saved. So you can't just say the Jews, because that would include all, like, most of the apostles and, you know what I mean? All the, I can't think of the word for it. Messianic Jews. Oh, my brain just went Friday, as it were. There you go, Tommy Noble. Boom. Stick it to him. Yes, Bart Ehrman, the crucifixion is an historic fact, and no one noticed a big curtain with a wizard behind it. There was no yellow brick road either. Spoiler alert. So yeah, there may have been little people. I really don't know now. I'm stretching this analogy quite far. Yeah. And what? And what? Do they pick up stones and chuck it at him because they think it's demons? Do they think that statue's going to grow a mouth at the end of time to identify Jews? So what? And what? Like he's telling me as if I'm a Catholic, but you think I won't defend? I've defended Catholicism plenty of times at Speaker's Corner. Exactly, Cherokee. But yeah, sometimes. Kiss the painting. You might want to kiss that little stone, that minging thing, like with all the lip marks and the sort of like, come on now. Come on, everyone knows what it looks like or represents. I wouldn't say it's like a genteel painting. I would say, well, I'm not going to say it because it's not your fault, babe. All the other, like, research that you do on other stuff, like, why don't you? I know there's red lines and all that, yes, Cardi style, but why don't you just have a look? Mecca was a good bookmakers, John, back in the day. William Hill now. So, yeah. Yes, they can, Mr. Brown. So you're in with a chance, babes. Yes, they can. So, yeah. All of us are innately sinful. Yep. Even you. Everyone. So, yep. Yeah. Murderers can get in. Paedophiles can get in. Everyone can get in, but the prerequisite is not an easy option, and they won't be that way once they're saved if they don't, like, obviously die a couple of minutes after they convert. Yeah, the only people who are not getting in are those who blaspheme the Holy Spirit. That's a guaranteed. I mean, I'm hoping that God's infinite mercy somehow, I don't know, takes into account maybe they were members of a largely peaceful religion at the time that they said it, like Abbas, for example. But anyway, let's not do it. Right, I just heard my door go. I reckon I'm going to press the button. I was such a lovely little vibe with Corrie, just chilling and thinking about, the great evils in the world, and then we skipped on over to a different form of it. Yes, Mr. Brown, no mile long erect penises, just full on wall to wall carpet of. Listen to yourself, man. Your sins are forgiven, is what Yahweh promises. So. Bigots is such a silly thing to attest to. It's a bit of a redundant word after the racism. What about Islamophobes? Oh, Mr. Brown, no, there's going to be loads of former Islamophobes because obviously they'll realise it's all twaddle anyway, and they weren't scared in the first place when their eyes are open spiritually. Martin, I ain't heard that since I was at school, babes. I haven't heard that one for ages. Stop it. Right, look, my nose is going. It's all going Pete on. Corrie, big up the 10 boom, as it were. I'll try not to, Tommy. I'm on a bit of a Hitler's deal with the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, sort of like free diet. But yes, I will try not to forget it. Oh, Hitler. Like as if he's the biggest problem we've got at the minute, because obviously all the Nazis let me not even go into politics. I can't. It's such obvious twaddle sometimes. Like they can't even keep a straight face when they're feeding us this crud. Oh, faked pictures of I don't even want to talk about the current conflict because it's just pretty distressing. But now my nose is absolutely gone, as it were. I'm definitely pressing the first button. However, if I can't sleep again tonight, I'll be back at silly o'clock. Other than that, I'll have a go. But I've got to eat food and do some admin stuff. And my next uni course is coming up. And I've got a little teeny weeny window of time off from uni. And I'm spending it arguing about Mohammed for a hot second, which is it's been done to death. Literally to death by people who do it in Pakistan. Just, you know what I mean? I will do, Mr. Brown. I hope to see you there. No joke. There'll be Muslims in there as well. How'd you like that? Oh, I mean, some people could think to themselves, "Oh, I don't want to be in there with people who said you're like worse than a pond scum, as it were." But no. Like I say, try and get your spiritual ear holes open. I know they're scaled. Hear it again. For one, prejudice, in and out group preferencing, as per the studies in the 1950s, is a legitimate human response. Like it's beneficial to the species, to more likely to align yourself or believe good things about your in-group. We don't only have one in-group. It's not as base as colour. Don't listen to the Marxist Mr. Brown, because it's just beneath you. Seriously. Especially when your religion supposedly, even though we all know it don't, says all Muslims are equal, as it were. So don't go like racism is the original sin, because it's really not. And it is forgivable, unlike Black Lives Matter would have you believe. Please don't like start giving it the... It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. If you think racism is the worst sin that you're going to come across, God bless you. You're in for a shocker when you find out about paedophilia and the people who make apologetics for it. Or wait till you find that crap out. Anyway, look forward to your mile-long erect penis and your little boys who don't bleed and your, I don't even know, your porno pictures, Harry Potter style in Jana. And I'll just crack on with heaven, if that's all right with you. Even if there are, even... You never know. Hitler might have had a sudden, like, genuine conversion, even if he had a deathbed. I don't know if he was in South America. Who cares? Because at that stage, God doesn't differentiate between... Sin is all sin. You know what I mean? It's all the thing that separates us from God. And only Christ's blood, which is miraculously all-encompassing of sin as an atonement. Racism, that's your big showstopper. You want to go to hell because there might be racists in the real life heaven. Listen to what you're saying, man. Please. No, there won't be good people. There is none good. Not one. The only good one is God. Keep up, babes. How long have you been listening to Christian? Come on, man. No, there aren't any good people, I'm afraid. The Holy Spirit works through us with goodness as a fruit of the Spirit. So the more you're indwelt by the Holy Spirit, the more prone you are to be able to achieve some goodness in your actions. Innately, we've still got the flesh that's under the curse. Like, there is no good people up there. I didn't do that. But there is, of course, a point, and I think you're aware of it. I haven't got time. I've got my first button pressed. I've got stuff to do. But yes, Carol B, that's an excellent idea. I remember we said that in I think it's Zogo film, and he got a little bit irritated, a bit eggy. But yes, you are free, of course, everybody watching, to pray for whomever you decide to pray for, unless you work in the NHS. And then don't let anyone know that you did it, because you might get the sack. Anyway, the blood of Christ utterly atones for all the sins. You can have a sin in a thought, like word, deed, yada yada. Like prejudging people potentially out of ignorance and what you've been taught. It's not even up there. It's not even up there with the worst of the worst. And yet, like I said, there's 7 sins that God hates. None of them are racism or bigotry. But I love it's like some sort of weird narcissistic, like the exact accusation you could legitimately level at a certain well-known religion that's available on every high street, as it were. And that's what's getting thrown out, like as a reason to not go to heaven, or like, oh, enjoy your time. I will. I really will. Right. It's promised. Okay. On that bombshell. Yep. I've got to eat food and stuff, you know, maintenance. Yes, Mr. Brown, we really were, because of, I wonder who brought them up. Maybe I'll play it back again and triple check that I'm reading and reacting to your stuff. Just maybe. Anyway. Not at the moment, we can't, babes. No, I'm seriously going. I've got my button in front of me. But Genesis and the fall, I covered that, I think, with Mansour at one point, with that nutty Abumba Dada Bumba, whatever his name was, the African dude, and little Omar, is he Somali, Ethiopian guy? I can't remember where he's from, Eritrea. Anyway, I've done videos about that. Honestly, babes, he's gone Italian on me. I can't, because I've done an hour, 20 minutes. My mouth is dry. I need a cigarette, quite frankly. And, yeah, stuff to do. But come and hijack a live stream again. So No, we'll do it. I'll do some teaching on it. Have a look through. I've done. I don't think you actually want to learn anything though, do you? Other than practicing the arguing. But yeah, triunity in the Old Testament. That's important. But yeah, it's one of them ones, isn't it? Anyway, I've got to press this button. Got to do it just now, just because. And there's Psalm 91. Thank you, Dragon. All right, Mr. Brown, I ain't saying no. I'm saying not now. Honestly, I'm starving. Like, well, that's a fib, but I'm very hungry. DJ Crafty, yes, Jesus Christ was, is, and remains actually because of his glorified body. He's 100% human, whilst at the same time, because of the hypostatic union, he is also 100% God. Happy to answer your question, and now pressing the button. Right, lots of love, and yep, please God, I'll chat to you again today, like as in this evening at some stage. And yep, God bless you, and yep, keep it real, keep it Jesus if you're already there. Have a look for Jesus if you think you know him, and maybe you don't. If you do believe in Easter and obviously love him, direct quote, have a little look at the Bible and see what they said about him before the other like subsequent narrative was recorded. What's the harm in that, you may ask yourself, seeing as how certain other God said that they revealed it. Carol, love you as well, babes. Everyone, I have love, but just little patience at the moment because of the hungriness of me. And I just thought to myself, I don't even know what I'm having for tea. So it's dire straits out here, everyone. No joke. I can't get takeaway, but it is Friday. Let's not discuss that at this stage of the game. Let me get off this phone, as it were, this computer, because someone might have hung around right to the end in case I say something interesting. In the last 5 minutes, I've just been waffling, bunnying. Anyway, Corrie ten Boom, you remember her from the title. This is getting so clipped. And God bless you as well, Dragon. And yeah, I'll see Cherokee. If I don't see you in my Skype very soon, you and I, madam, we're gonna have issues because you're here sitting typing. I know you can work your way around the computer. Please, I'll be your best friend. Already probably am. Let's do this, shiz, and I'm pressing the button. Right, lots of love. See you later. Bye.